In celebrating the first year anniversary of the President's administration on May 29, 2016, Mr. President launched the Social Protection Program to the tune of 500 billion naira. And the core mandate is to take care of the less privileged in the country. In his words during the launch, he said, "I am happy to formally launch by far the most ambitious social protection program in our history. A program that both seeks to start the process of lifting many from poverty while at the same time creating the opportunity for people to fend for themselves. In this regard, 500 billion has been appropriated in the 2016 budget for social intervention in programs in 5 key areas: job creation for 500,000 teachers and 100,000 artisans across the nation, 5.5 million children to be provided with nutritious meals under the social feeding program, blah, 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 blah." When this was launched, it sounded like broken record to some persons. It sounded like a joke of the century. But 2 years down the line, the program is playing out. That is the focus of the segment on Inside Today. My guests, I have a lawyer practicing in the United States of America who is basically a non-profit consultant based in the US, Susan Henshaw. It's my pleasure to have you on Inside.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I also have a policy analyst and a lawyer. For information, I'm surrounded by lawyers on set today. Johannes Tobi. It's my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
Johannes Wojuola is also a lawyer and a policy analyst. So, looking at my opening, where are we?
I think we're in a very good place, actually. You know, we're in a very good place because this is the first time, actually, we're launching a social intervention program the way it's actually supposed to be launched, and also proceeding with the progress and at the pace it's supposed to proceed. So when you look at that, and when you look at the fact that a lot of other things, for example, we've had programs in the past that have been launched. I think the
NAPEP.
the NAPEP, and then we've had, you know, but this is the first time that, in my understanding, you know, that a program has been launched with integrity, that it should actually be, social programs should be launched with. You know, now having said that, you know, we have, if we're to look at, say, other climes where you have this kinds of programs, you know, it gives me good hope that we're really where we're supposed to be. You know, it's, the progress has been not a dump, where you start off dump everything and then sustainability becomes a problem. But in this case, the government is rolling out, you know, which gives me hope. We're in a good place, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I think a very important function of government is to be able to cater for the people, and not just the elites, not just the middle class, but also the people at the lowest levels of the you know, society's cadre. And the social investment programs have targeted rightly this category of people who on a normal day have no access to that feel and touch of government. We talk of giving people, children, food at the, you know, at the grassroots level schools, the homegrown school feeding program. It's unprecedented. Even though we've had, you know, Ekiti State has tried it before, it was successful in Ekiti State. We're seeing a government that is in touch with the poorest of the poor people. We're looking at the Empower programs, which is not just catering to provide jobs for hundreds of thousands of young people, but it's also bridging the gap of health, availability of health workers in rural communities, availability of teachers, because that has always been a big problem, you know, in especially the rural communities. We have the teachers quite all right in the towns and in the metropolis cities, but then what about the rural communities? Now, Empower is not just giving jobs to young people who are graduates but are unemployed, but also bridging that gap. Also the agricultural extension officers. Now, when you also look at it, these young graduates would also go through trainings during their period, before being deployed. They are going to be empowered with tablets that would contain information, that with skills and all of that. Now you're creating a lot of value in young people, and this has been lacking in most of our social investment programs. Our social investment programs have been just dole out money with no sustainable sustainable benefits to the beneficiaries. It's a one-off thing, and then people go, and you cannot measure the level of impact. But here in these cases, in the 4 core programs of the Buhari social investment programs, we are seeing an impact that is getting to the right beneficiaries. Not just getting to the right beneficiaries, it's showing sustainability over time, in a situation where at the end of the day we can look back and say that, oh, so person who today has established this business was an Empower beneficiary, or was a beneficiary of the GEP loans, or for instance a child who was compelled to go to school, compelled in quote, went to school because there was free lunch, and so he always wanted to go to school. So these programs are not just social investment like we have them, but they are different in the sense that they are targeting the right beneficiaries.
Well, Susan, let me get back to you. Okay. The other area you mentioned, it also has a component of conditional cash transfer scheme to provide financial support for up to 1 million vulnerable beneficiaries and what have you. Now, one concern when this program or initiative was launched was one of those things they are going to use to sort out their politician friends and what have you. Do you think it is really going down well to those who should benefit?
Well, absolutely. Now let's take a little time to talk about how it's going down. Now it's going down in a way that politics has been totally out of the issue. With the program, the cash program is set up in such a way that there are no middlemen. The government pays the intended beneficiary directly. And the other thing we also need to understand is that with the BVN as it is, it's a little difficult, say for a third party to sneak in and try to do one of the things we're pretty much used to doing. So, like I was saying before, I was saying that if you set things up right, they tend to run right. And one of the things I've been most impressed about with the social intervention program, a lot of the things that, we would have had to worry about, if this thing wasn't set up right. I'm very glad to say that the government has taken time to sit down and do its homework, Like I was saying, payments attached to BVN, which are of course traceable to the direct beneficiaries. We also have the fact that the eligibility, requirements, all the screenings and so on are done in the community level by people who are members of the community. And so, for example, being able to identify the poorest of the poor who actually need this money. The government has set it up in such a way that it's members of the community who pick the eligible people, and who do the screening to find out that they meet all the requirements, So we don't have people who are, who don't qualify or who are trying to do the usual things, so to speak. So that's one of the things. It's been set up quite well, and it's unfolding quite well. As a matter of fact, now, for lack of a better way to put it, when you're working with, for example, rural communities, you have people before now coming in from the outside, and trying to do all these things. But I think that one of the most important things to stress in this instance is that everything is done at community level, so intended beneficiaries are getting what they need to get directly, and the process is working.
Still on you.
Yeah.
I know naturally that there's a reason why we will not take those who are managing it directly to speak on this program, because they want to sing and sermonize on what they have achieved and what have you. The concern basically has been this thing has a lifespan for now. It's a project.
Yes.
At the end of the lifespan, what happens to the beneficiaries?
Well,
would they be fused into the labor market naturally?
I think that, it has been set up just the way, public benefits are set up everywhere else in the world, which is that, the hope is that at some point people are able to stand on their own 2 feet, and now let's say, for example, taking one of the requirements of, I would assume, how to identify who are the poorest, of the poor, would be that, for example, they'll take family size, they'll take, if anybody in the family is earning an income, of course, the literacy level there, and so on, all of the indices, universal indices of poverty. And let's say the circumstances change in a family's life, for example, say somebody starts a business and is doing well, or one of the children gets a job, older children in the family, or something happens that changes. I think it's basically set up in that way that there's a lot of review going on, and once a family's circumstances has changed, there's no longer a need to be on the program, they get cut off. So
Okay.
I think that's basically how that works,
Yes.
isn't it?
The programs are all tied, they are conditionals. There are conditions, When you say the conditional cash transfer, for instance, now, you have a situation where the beneficiaries have to meet certain conditions before they can even become beneficiaries. And one of such conditions is the fact that their children have to enroll into schools. Giving young children education already is empowering them for a long-term basis. So it's not going to be a thing that is going to be on forever, quite all right. The Empower program, for instance, also is a 2-year program. During the program, the beneficiaries are being empowered with skills. Let's take, for instance, the agricultural extension officers who are going to go into the field, get hands-on experience as agricultural extension officers. During the period also, they are going to purchase, which is going to be purchased for them by the government, a tablet. That tablet is going to contain information, like I said, on skills acquisition, basic knowledge, and things that will improve their knowledge, their skill set. And at the end of the day, after 2 years, you know that you have not just given a person a job, but like the word says, you have empowered the person.
Okay. Well, it does not have a political tinge from him,
Yes.
and you don't need to belong to a particular divide to be there. Now, people still play politics with it. People are still throwing stones at it. It's not working. What should they be doing now? Talking about those who just feel that, no, it's just not possible because it's not coming from me.
Right. I think that, that is really who we are, The same things that make us a great nation can also be kind of a minus, where people are not, and we've come from a place too where trust, generally is an issue, in the polity, but I think that most of the dissension we are getting, or let me call it doubt, some from the opposition, some even from, people who have good intentions, who have, constructive criticism, is that, first of all, they're not sure, if these programs are for real, still suffering from the post-traumatic stress of previous governments and, rolling out programs they have no intentions of, getting going. And so from that perspective, I understand it, but from the perspective of just criticizing for the heck of it, when things like, you can't argue away facts. For example, you can't argue away that, so and so million children are benefiting from, this homegrown food program. You can't argue the fact that these programs are all linked together, and that's another thing that gives substantive integrity, where you have, farmers growing the food, and then you have the people who are preparing the food getting employment, and then you have children who are the beneficiaries of the food, of the food program, also having food. What does a school food program, we call them school lunch in other climes, what does that do? Even the United Nations have recognized that this is really a priority area for most governments, especially, in sub-Saharan Africa, to start with, that children, when they have food in school, it discourages absenteeism, and also it cannot be argued away that children who are fed properly, who have good nutrition, also have better cognitive
Okay,
skills.
quickly before we exhaust the time, I'll
Yeah.
come to Johannes now.
Yes.
Let me just stay on you. If there are no safeguards, is it possible it could be abuse along the line? And what possible safeguards can be injected?
Right, let me say this really off the top. United States, for example, has been running social intervention programs, which they call welfare programs, since about the 1930s. It started, and by the 1940s, mid-1940s, the US actually institutionalized these programs and made them entitlements, for poor people. Because a lot of times we hear, government policies trickle down and all that. But to start from the bottom, to make sure that people at least have some sustainable, quality of life. Food, housing, and healthcare, and that kind of thing for the poor, which is what we are trying to do here. And yes, it would be foolhardy to believe that there would be no,
Safeguards?
Foolhardy to believe that sometimes the safeguards might, get really elastic, and maybe people take eyes off the ball. It's human nature and that kind of thing. But again, recall that the way it has been done, everything is so tied in, the BVN, for example, with the cash program. Then we have the fact that the government has removed all the middlemen. We're not doing contractors. We're not doing middlemen saying, okay, we'll give you a contract to go supply food for this. What the government is doing is that it's paying directly. Monies are going directly from the government, for example, to the cooks. Government is paying monies directly to the farmers, buying the food from them directly. So all those kinds of things we never really had before. We can downplay it or criticize it all we want.
Okay.
But this is a movement forward.
Okay.
And we need to recognize that.
Okay. She just said so. Work in progress.
Indeed.
Movement forward, right?
Indeed.
So, in sum now, because we don't have all the time within the segment, what we'll be telling Nigerians, a lot welcome it, a lot still feel, it's not working, it's not possible, it can't work. People are still very apathetic.
I think it's what we need at this point is patience and understanding that there's I think it's a Yugoslavian proverb that says grain by grain the bread, stone by stone the castle. We cannot build this wall a social program all of a sudden overnight. It's going to take time. We're going to see one or two hitches. I know that I think in one of the states in the Middle Belt, where a situation where I think it was Niger State, where there was some beneficiaries some names were being sent, not being the beneficiaries of the program. It caused some issues because the core beneficiaries did not get their allowances because the names did not tally with those that the government had. But because of the BVN, for instance, it was able to say that these people are not the core beneficiaries. It just resulted to a delay, in the payment. We're going to have this. We're going to have problems come up. But the main thing is that we're building a foundation, a sustainable foundation that can be tested over time. Okay. And that is what we should, hold on to in this point in time. And we should give it to the Buhari government for embarking on this program. It's unprecedented. You've seen a government that has shown devotion to the bottom of the hierarchy of society. But even at that, we should also have objective criticisms of the programs, because if people are not talking in maybe Enugu State or in Zamfara State, those at the top are not going to know that so is happening there. So people should come out and give objective criticisms, be able to say that, so is happening here, and then you will have a better system, a system that is responsive and a system that works.
Okay. Your last word, and let it be tied to maybe the attitude of the in-house operatives who are handling this project. What's the advice to them so they don't get it wrong along the line?
I think to stay, the programs, have been set up. Stay and focus on how it is intended to run out.
Yeah.
I think that's basically it. We're not going to have it's not going to be devoid of hitches. human beings err, you know, and there's going to be, of course, you know, other problems.
Okay.
But even, like I said, in countries where you've been running social welfare programs for upwards of 100 years, we still have welfare fraud,
Okay.
you know, which is, yeah, it's a big deal. But it would be there, you know, to some extent, but to be able to catch it and prosecute people who do it is what we should be looking at.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Susan Henshaw,
Yes.
lawyer based in the US, and I like the word a non-profit consultant.
Yes.
It was nice talking with you on Insight. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
And also Johannes Tobi, policy analyst and lawyer. It was nice talking with you.
Always a
And
pleasure.
I'm happy that I did not intend to. You didn't enter into any litigation against me.
Oh, you are safe.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Up next on the program.